the 17-pounder gun, a British engineering marvel. It is the only Allied tank gun truly capable of consistently defeating the formidable German Tiger I from the front. But on August 8, 1944, in the fields of Normandy, one such gun, mounted on a Sherman Firefly, finds itself facing not one, but three of these steel monsters. The odds are stacked, the stakes are unimaginable, and the fate of an entire offensive hangs in the balance. How does a single gunner, with minimal combat experience, turn the tide against such overwhelming power? The summer of 1944 in Normandy is a crucible of steel and fire. Allied forces, having landed on D-Day, are locked in a brutal struggle to break out of the beachhead. The terrain, a patchwork of small fields, sunken lanes, and dense hedgerows known as the bocage, favors the German defenders, allowing them to conceal their formidable anti-tank guns and heavy armor. British tank crews, in particular, face a daunting challenge. Their standard Sherman tanks, armed with a 75mm gun, are often outmatched by the thicker armor and more powerful 88mm guns of German Panther and Tiger tanks. A common, grim assessment among Allied tankers is that it takes 5 Shermans to destroy a single Tiger. Into this unforgiving landscape steps Trooper Joseph William Ekins. Born on July 15, 1923, in Yielden, Northamptonshire, England, Joe Ekins is a young man of 21. Before the war, he worked in a shoe factory, a quiet existence far removed from the roar of tank engines and the thunder of artillery. He volunteered for service with the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry, feeling a moral obligation to contribute to the war effort. After minimal training, he is assigned as a gunner in a squadron of the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry, part of the 33rd Armoured Brigade. His tank is a Sherman Firefly, a crucial modification of the standard M4 Sherman. The Firefly replaces the original 75mm gun with the potent British Ordnance QF 17-pounder anti-tank gun, a weapon capable of penetrating 233mm of armor from 1,000 meters. This makes it one of the few Allied tanks that can effectively counter the heavily armored German Tiger I. Joe Ekins' specific Firefly is named Velikiye Luki, following the squadron's practice of naming tanks after towns in the Soviet Union. Yet, despite the Firefly's superior firepower, Joe Ekins has only fired his gun a handful of times in practice, and never in actual combat. Now, on August 8, 1944, he finds himself on the cusp of his first real engagement, positioned with his troop on the western edge of the Dela-de-la-Roque Wood, near the French village of Saint-Ainan-de-Cramonil. The Allied offensive, code-named Operation Totalize, launched in the early hours of August 8, 1944, aims to break through the German defenses south of Caen and drive towards Falaise, a crucial objective to trap the German forces in Normandy. The initial phase of Totalize involves an innovative night attack using mechanized infantry and a massive artillery barrage. Over 1,000 bombers dropped 3,500 tons of bombs on German positions. The 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry, supporting the 51st Highland Infantry Division, leads the left-hand column of the Canadian Army through 4 miles of heavily defended territory. By dawn, the village of Saint-Ainan-de-Cramonil is secured. However, the success of the initial thrust is immediately met with fierce German resistance. The enemy, particularly the elite 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, and elements of the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, are not easily dislodged. Their doctrine demands immediate counterattacks to prevent any Allied breakthrough from gaining momentum. The Allied forces, despite their initial gains, are in exposed positions. The challenges are manifold. The dense terrain restricts visibility and maneuver, German anti-tank defenses are robust, and the psychological impact of facing the formidable Tiger tanks is immense. British tank crews often lament their vulnerability, knowing that their standard Shermans offer less protection and firepower than their German counterparts. The very idea of engaging a Tiger tank is enough to instill dread. It is widely understood that a frontal assault against a Tiger is a near-suicidal endeavor. Command skepticism and the inherent difficulties of coordinating a large-scale offensive also present significant obstacles. The battle plan for Totalize calls for a phased approach, but the rapidly evolving situation on the ground means that units often find themselves operating with limited information and support. The communication systems of the era, while improving, are still prone to delays and breakdowns. The pressure on individual tank crews is immense, as they are often left to make life or death decisions in fast-moving, chaotic engagements. The terrain itself, with its hidden firing positions and limited lines of sight, makes coordinated tank warfare exceptionally difficult. The German defenders, intimately familiar with the landscape, exploit every advantage, turning seemingly innocuous hedgerows and orchards into deadly traps. No one believed it was possible to maintain momentum against such entrenched and determined opposition. They were about to be proven catastrophically wrong by the actions of a single Firefly crew. The early morning of August 8, 1944, finds trooper Joe Ekins and his crew in their Sherman Firefly, Velikie Luki, positioned with 3 troop of a squadron, 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry. They are dug in on the western edge of the Della de la Roque Wood, overlooking a large, open expanse of ground south of St. Ainan de Cramonil. The air is thick with the tension of battle, a mix of expectation and dread. The ground trembles from distant artillery, a constant reminder of the wider conflict raging across Normandy. At approximately 10 a.m., a lookout from their concealed position in the orchards reports movement. German tanks are advancing up Route Nationale 158 from the town of Sintho, directly across their front. The sight sends a chill through the British crews. Not just any tanks, but the dreaded Tiger I, 7 of them, to be precise, though from Ekins' vantage point, only 3 are clearly visible. These are part of a counterattack launched by the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, spearheading a thrust by the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, to halt the Allied advance. The troop commander, Sergeant Gordon, gives the order to hold fire. He waits, patiently, agonizingly, as the massive German tanks lumber closer. The Firefly's 17-pounder gun is a potent weapon, but accuracy is paramount, and the Taiga's thick armor demands precise placement of shots. The range closes from 1,200 yards, then 1,000, then 900. Ekins, his heart pounding, grips the controls of his gun. He has never fired in combat before, yet the weight of responsibility for his crew and the success of the mission rests heavily on his shoulders. At approximately 800 yards, Sergeant Gordon gives the command to fire. "Target the rearmost one," he orders. Joe Ekins traverses the turret, aligning the crosshairs on the distant, box-like silhouette of the 3rd Tiger. He takes a breath, holds it, and squeezes the firing mechanism. The 17-pounder roars, a deafening concussion that reverberates through the tank. The recoil shoves the Firefly backward slightly. A shell streaks across the 800-yard gap. It is a direct hit. The round strikes the rear of the Tiger tank, its most vulnerable point. A plume of black smoke erupts, followed quickly by flames. The German tank shudders, then grinds to a halt, burning. Ekins has scored his first kill. The adrenaline surges, but there is no time for celebration. The 2nd Tiger, realizing it is under attack, begins to traverse its powerful 88mm gun towards Ekins' position. "Second target," Gordon shouts. Ekins reloads, a well-rehearsed motion, and fires again. Another shell flies true. This time, the round hits the 2nd Tiger, and it explodes violently, a fiery blossom on the horizon, likely due to a strike on its ammunition. The lead Tiger, number 312, now turns, attempting to find cover and identify the source of the attack. It presents a more difficult target, partially obscured, but Ekins is locked in. He fires 2 more rounds. Both connect. The Tiger is struck, smoke billows, and then it too ignites, becoming a burning wreck. In a mere 12 minutes, Joe Ekins, a gunner with virtually no combat experience, has destroyed 3 of Germany's most feared tanks. The sheer speed and accuracy of this engagement are astounding. The Tiger tanks, with their formidable armor and deadly guns, are considered almost invincible by many Allied soldiers. Ekins, operating under immense pressure, has defied these odds. If you had been told that a single tank gunner, with only practice rounds to his name, would take out 3 of the most powerful enemy tanks in a matter of minutes, would you have believed it? Tell me in the comments. What Joe Ekins does not know in that moment, what no one in his crew fully comprehends, is the identity of the commander of that second Tiger, tank number 007. It is sulfur monosulfide Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann, Germany's most celebrated tank ace. Wittmann is a legend, credited with destroying between 135 and 138 Allied tanks and 132 anti-tank guns before this day. His actions at Villers-Bocage in June 1944, where he single-handedly destroyed a column of British tanks, had cemented his reputation as the Black Baron and a propaganda hero for the Third Reich. The destruction of his Tiger Tan K marks a significant, though at the time unknown, turning point in the psychological warfare of the Normandy campaign. SS Oberfuhrer Kurt Meyer, commander of the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend, sits in his staff car near Saintonge, France, in the late morning of August 8, 1944. He is overseeing the desperate German counterattack against Operation Totalize. The sight that greets him is dismaying. Scores of German infantrymen are retreating in disarray, a clear sign of the Allied breakthrough. Meyer had personally ordered the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion to engage the British forces advancing towards Saint-Aignan-de-Cramonil. Michael Wittmann, the legendary Panzer ace, is with his 4 Tiger tanks, positioned behind a tree-lined hedgerow, camouflaged against Allied air attacks. Wittmann, using the battalion commander's Tiger 007 due to repairs on his own vehicle, is summoned to a meeting with Meyer and his staff to finalize counterattack plans. The German command is operating under the assumption that their heavy tanks, particularly the Tigers, will be able to blunt the Allied advance, just as they have done repeatedly in the past. They believe their superior armor and firepower will allow them to dominate the open ground, despite the numerical superiority of the British and Canadian forces. The sudden, devastating losses of 3 Tigers in quick succession come as a shock, disrupting their coordinated counter-thrust and sowing confusion among the remaining Panzer crews. They are certain the British cannot possess such precision and destructive capability at this range, leading them to initially suspect air attacks. The reality is far more localized and far more deadly. The battle continues to rage. After the destruction of the 3 Tigers, Joe Ekins and his crew reverse back into the cover of the orchard. The immediate threat seems to have passed, but the tension remains palpable. The 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry, as a whole, is engaged in fierce fighting throughout the day, claiming the destruction of 15 German tanks and 5 self-propelled guns, though at a cost of 20 of their own tanks. Later that same morning, Ekins' Firefly is again called into action. A 4th German tank, a Panzer IV, is spotted. Ekins, now with the confidence of 3 confirmed kills, targets and destroys this vehicle as well, adding to his remarkable tally for the day. However, the tide of battle is relentless. The Germans are still mounting fierce resistance, and the British tanks are constantly under threat from concealed anti-tank guns and other armored vehicles. At some point during the day, Ekins' Firefly takes a direct hit. The precise circumstances are not extensively detailed in all accounts, but the impact is severe enough to disable the tank. Joe Ekins and his crew are forced to abandon Velikie Luki and retreat to safety. For a gunner who has just achieved such an extraordinary feat, this marks the end of his direct involvement in tank-to-tank combat. He is subsequently reassigned to a new crew, but this time as a wireless operator, a role that means he will not fire a tank gun again during the war. The broader context of Operation Totalize is one of intense, grinding combat. The Canadian and Polish armored divisions, engaged in the second phase of the operation, struggle against the determined German 89th Infantry Division and the remaining elements of the 12th SS Panzer Division. At midday, a tragic friendly fire incident occurs when Allied bombers mistakenly strike their own positions, resulting in 300 Canadian and Polish casualties. Despite these setbacks and the heavy losses on both sides, Allied forces suffer at least 1,256 casualties and lose over 145 tanks. While German casualties reach approximately 3,000, the advance continues. By the evening of August 8, the Allied forces have pushed forward approximately 7 kilometers, a hard-won gain in a brutal campaign. The fight for every meter of ground is desperate. German resistance is characterized by well-placed anti-tank guns and highly effective use of mortars, which account for 3/4 of British casualties. The British, in turn, are developing new tactics, known as all-arms cooperation, or armored infantry battle groups, to overcome these challenges. This involves tanks, infantry, artillery, and engineers working in close coordination, a lesson learned at great cost in North Africa and refined in the hedgerows of Normandy. The Firefly, with its powerful 17-pounder, is a critical component of these evolving tactics, providing the necessary punch to deal with German heavy armor. What does it tell you about a man that he could perform such an extraordinary act of courage and skill in his very first combat engagement, only to be reassigned to a less direct role? Tell me in the comments. The actions of Joe Ekins on August 8 are not isolated. Throughout Operation Totalize, individual acts of bravery and tactical ingenuity are crucial in overcoming the entrenched German defenses. The British 33rd Armoured Brigade, to which the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry belongs, plays a vital role in supporting the infantry advances, often facing direct fire from German tanks and anti-tank guns. The terrain around Saint-Aignan-de-Cramonil is particularly challenging, with orchards and small woods providing excellent cover for both attackers and defenders. The ability of Ekins' crew to spot and engage the Tigers from their concealed position is a testament to their situational awareness and the effectiveness of their chosen firing position. The psychological impact of the Tiger tank on Allied morale cannot be overstated. Its thick, sloped armor and powerful 88mm gun make it a truly fearsome opponent. Allied tank crews often feel at a disadvantage, even in numerically superior engagements. The Firefly, however, provides a much-needed equalizer. Its 17-pounder gun, though requiring careful aiming, can penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor, something few other Allied tanks can achieve. The development and deployment of the Firefly are a direct response to the increasing potency of German armor. Prime Minister Winston Churchill himself emphasizes the importance of these modifications, leading to the conversion of 2,000 M4 Shermans into Fireflies during the war. The battle for Saint-Aignan-de-Cramonil and the surrounding areas is a microcosm of the larger struggle for Normandy. It is a battle of attrition, where every village, every ridge, and every hedgerow is fiercely contested. The German defenders, though outnumbered, fight with grim determination, inflicting heavy casualties on the advancing Allied forces. The counterattack involving Wittmann's Tigers is a desperate attempt to stem the tide, a typical German reaction to any perceived breakthrough. The failure of this counterattack, largely due to the actions of Ekins and other Allied tank crews, is a significant blow to German efforts to stabilize their front. The experience of being a tank gunner in a Firefly is intense. The muzzle flash of the 17-pounder can cause temporary night blindness, and the recoil is immense, shaking the entire vehicle. The confined space of the turret, the heat, the noise, and the constant threat of enemy fire create an environment of extreme stress. Yet, Ekins, despite his inexperience, demonstrates remarkable composure and skill under these conditions. His ability to consistently hit moving targets at extended ranges speaks to a natural aptitude for gunnery that few possess. He himself later attributes his success, in part, to luck and a natural ability. The fighting on August 8, 1944, is part of a larger, coordinated effort to exploit the American breakthrough at Avranches and encircle the German armies in what would become the Falaise Pocket. The objective of Operation Totalize is not just to gain ground, but to collapse the German front and cut off their retreat. The actions of individual soldiers, like Joe Ekins, contribute directly to this strategic goal by neutralizing key enemy assets and breaking the German will to resist. The destruction of Wittmann's Tiger, in particular, removes a highly effective and psychologically significant adversary from the battlefield. The day's fighting is long and arduous. Allied units push forward, but the German resistance stiffens with every kilometer gained. The initial momentum of the night attack slows as the day progresses, and the Allied forces are forced to reorganize for a fresh assault. The cost is high, but the gains are strategically important. The battle has forced the Germans to commit valuable armored reserves, weakening their overall defensive posture in Normandy. The morning air of August 8, 1944, crackles with the aftermath of battle, but the deadliest encounter is still unfolding for some. Trooper Joe Ekins, nestled in the gunner's seat of his Sherman Firefly, WWII, has just witnessed 3 of the formidable German Tiger I tanks, including the one commanded by Michael Wittmann, erupt in fire and smoke across the open fields near Saint-Aignan-de-Cramonil. The roar of his 17-pounder gun still echoes in his ears, and the smell of cordite hangs heavy in the air. His initial fear is now replaced by a focused intensity, a primal drive to survive and complete his mission. The battle, however, is far from over. German forces, reeling from the initial shock, are regrouping and launching desperate counterattacks. The Firefly crew, having reversed into the relative safety of the Deladillaroque Wood, watches for new 3ATS. The vast, open ground before them remains a killing field, littered with the wreckage of both Allied and German vehicles from the larger Operation Totalize. Suddenly, movement again. Not the heavy, unmistakable silhouettes of Tigers, but a different, equally dangerous German tank, a Panzer IV. Its presence signifies the continued German determination to push back the Allied advance, to deny them any further gains. This fourth target appears from a different angle, a new threat emerging from the chaos of the battlefield. Sergeant Gordon, the tank commander, spots it first. Panzer IV, bearing 270. Engage, he shouts, his voice strained but clear amidst the internal clamor of the tank. Joe Ekins, without hesitation, traverses the turret. The 17-pounder swings to the new target. The Panzer IV is an agile foe, smaller and faster than the Tiger, but still heavily armed and capable of inflicting lethal damage. The range is approximately 700 yards, still a considerable distance, but well within the Firefly's effective engagement envelope. Ekins lines up the shot. He has found a rhythm, an almost instinctual connection with his weapon. The terror of his first combat kills has sharpened into a cold, precise focus. He calculates the lead, adjusts for the tank's movement, and fires. The shell screams across the field. A blinding flash erupts on the Panzer IV's hull, followed by a dull thud that even inside the Firefly is discernible. The German tank shudders, its forward momentum halted. Smoke begins to seep from its engine compartment, then flames lick skyward. The Panzer IV is crippled, effectively out of the fight. 4 tanks. 4 direct hits. Joe Ekins has achieved something extraordinary, a feat of marksmanship and courage under fire that few could replicate. But the battlefield is unforgiving. The success of Ekins' Firefly has not gone unnoticed by the remaining German forces. Concealed anti-tank guns, perhaps an 88mm POC 43, or even another, undamaged German tank, are now searching for the source of such devastating fire. The Firefly, despite its powerful gun, is still a Sherman, and its armor, while improved, is not impervious to direct hits from heavy German anti-tank weaponry. A sudden, jarring impact rocks WWII. A shell, likely from a hidden German anti-tank position, strikes the Firefly's hull with brutal force. The interior is filled with a deafening clang of metal, the shriek of tearing steel, and the acrid smell of burnt propellant. The tank lurches violently, its tracks grinding to a halt. The engine sputters, then dies. "We're hit! We're hit!" a crewman yells. Sergeant Gordon quickly assesses the damage. The Firefly is immobilized. It cannot move, and its gun, though still potentially functional, is now a static target. To remain in the tank would be suicide. "Bail out! Bail out!" he commands, his voice urgent. Joe Ekins, shaken but uninjured, scrambles out of his gunner's position. The crew quickly exits the stricken Firefly, abandoning their vehicle to the growing danger. They run, low to the ground, seeking cover in the nearby hedgerows and ditches, escaping the immediate vicinity of their burning tank. The Firefly, Velikie Luki, which had just moments before been a beacon of destruction against the enemy, now sits a disabled hulk on the battlefield, a testament to the brutal reciprocity of tank warfare. Joe Ekins, the unassuming shoe factory worker turned tank gunner, has survived his first day of combat. He has destroyed 4 German tanks, including the legendary Tiger commanded by Michael Wittmann. But the battle has claimed his tank, and his role as a gunner is now, unexpectedly, at an end. The events of August 8, 1944, near Saint-Ainan-de-Cramonil, though initially overshadowed by the larger scale of Operation Totalize, would eventually etch Trooper Joe Ekins' name into the annals of World War II history. His actions, particularly the destruction of 3 Tiger I tanks, including Michael Wittmann's Tiger 007, were a pivotal, if then unrecognized, moment in the Normandy campaign. For decades after the war, the exact circumstances of Michael Wittmann's death remained a subject of debate among historians and veterans. Multiple Allied units, including Canadian and Polish forces, laid claim to the kill. However, extensive research, including investigations published in military magazines like After the Battle, in 1985, and the testimonies of fellow members of the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry like Les Taylor and Ken Tout, solidified the evidence pointing to Joe Ekins' Firefly as the decisive factor. The regimental war diary entry for August 8, listing the destruction of Tiger tanks 312, 007, and 314, further corroborated this account. Today, it is widely accepted that Joe Ekins delivered the fatal blow to the Black Baron. Ekins himself, a modest man, did not learn of Wittmann's identity until years after the war, during an interview with a military historian. He had simply been doing his duty, focused on the immediate task of destroying enemy tanks. His remarkable skill as a gunner, demonstrated by his ability to hit targets at ranges of 700 to 800 yards with only minimal training, was a critical factor in the success of the 17-pounder equipped Firefly against the heavily armored Tigers. After his Firefly was disabled, Joe Ekins was reassigned as a wireless operator. He never fired a tank gun in combat again, a surprising turn for a man who had just achieved such an incredible feat of gunnery. Despite this, he survived the rest of the war, a testament to the unpredictable nature of battlefield survival. Joe Ekins passed away on February 1, 2012, at the age of 88, in Kettering, Northamptonshire. The legacy of Joe Ekins extends beyond simply being credited with destroying a famous enemy tank commander. His story highlights the crucial role of the Sherman Firefly in countering German heavy armor, providing the British Army with a much-needed advantage in the brutal tank battles of Normandy. It also underscores the often unsung heroism of individual tank crews and gunners who faced overwhelming odds. In a war often characterized by vast industrial output and grand strategic maneuvers, the personal courage and skill of men like Joe Ekins were indispensable. His actions on August 8, 1944, contributed directly to breaking the German resistance in Normandy and accelerating the Allied advance towards the Falaise Pocket, a critical step in the liberation of France. One unexpected fact about Joe Ekins' post-combat career. Many years later, in 2000, at the age of 78, he was given the opportunity to fire the gun of a Challenger 2, the British Army's modern main battle tank, at the Tank Museum. He hit the target on his first shot, becoming the oldest person to fire a Challenger 2. If this story moved you, if you think these men deserve to be remembered, leave one word in the comments: unsung. Subscribe for a new forgotten story every week.